massive Navajo patrol encircled his home for the good turn he'd done for their young ones. Elias Thorne dwelled by himself in a sturdy log hut perched on the canyon's rim, passing his hours tracking game, mending gear, and upholding a serene existence away from strife. That routine altered the instant he stumbled upon two young Navajo maidens by the stream, hurt, scared, and struggling to stand on their own. Their horses had fled in panic, one lass's ankle wrenched badly, the other battered and frail. Elias paused just a heartbeat before scooping them up into his hut, tending their injuries with ointments he'd picked up from seasoned frontiersmen, offering them nourishment and aiding their recovery bit by bit. They scarcely knew his tongue, yet their gazes held faith as he mended one's ripped shoe and soothed the other with gentle motions. When they'd healed sufficient to journey on, they slipped away softly, but one lingered, placing her palm against his chest in a sign he couldn't quite grasp, though it lingered in his thoughts. Days slipped by, and Elias figured the episode was over, until a deep vibration hummed through the canyon. Stepping out onto the porch, he spotted a vast Navajo patrol topping the bluff. Scores of horsemen in flawless array, they advanced with command, enclosing his hut until escape was impossible. Lances lifted, mounts firm. Elias's gut urged him to stay put, even as his fingers brushed his revolver out of sheer reflex. Realizing defiance would avail nothing against such vast odds, a towering Navajo leader swung down from his saddle and strode toward him. Adorned with plumes and a shell choker denoting lofty status, bracing for reprisal over meddling in clan affairs, Elias steeled himself, but the leader raised a palm in greeting. Uttering first in his native speech, then in halting English, the leader revealed that the maidens Elias had aided were kin to a revered senior, and tales of his mercy had raced through their bands. Safeguarding the vulnerable held profound weight, and a fellow who lent aid sans expectation of gain was deemed noble. The horsemen encircling them held motionless, observing intently, while the leader's tone bore esteem, not menace. He informed Elias that the patrol had arrived not to injure him, but to honor his deed, a rarity for an outsider to their fold. Elias stood rapt, perplexed, as the leader evoked an ancient tenet in their ways. Dignity demands a fitting reply. The maidens had recounted his tender handling, how he'd sought no recompense and lingered at their side till they could stride once more. To the Navajo, this revealed his essence beyond mere talk. The leader motioned to the throng of assembled horsemen, clarifying that their turnout was homage. They held that no benevolent act ought pass unmarked, particularly by their fighters. Elias's breath hitched as the import sank in. What he'd done out of plain goodwill had been viewed as a feat meriting ritual regard. Then the leader disclosed there was further to it. Outriders had spotted marauders edging near Navajo lands, the sort notorious for hitting remote homesteads. They worried Elias, isolated as he was, might fall prey. Since he'd shielded their kin, they'd ridden to shield him ere peril struck. Elias sensed an odd blend of astonishment and modesty as the leader proffered his forearm in a fighter's salute. When Elias clasped it, the ring of riders unleashed a deep-throated hum that swept the canyon, a resonance brimming with solidarity and fervor. It wasn't the clamor of peril, but of affirmation. Poised at his threshold, ringed by riders extending beyond sight, Elias grasped that his world had shifted in unforeseen ways. He'd moved sans thought of gain, yet the Navajo arrayed before him, tendering more than mere gratitude. They'd come to enfold him in their safeguard, crafting a tie born of mercy unbidden. As the leader unclasped his grip, Elias knew he was no longer merely a lone settler on overlooked soil. He'd woven into a grander tapestry, entwined in the dignity of a folk who repaid fealty with fealty and etched every benevolence toward their blood. The canyon hung hushed once the hum ebbed, thrumming with its import. As the Navajo leader yielded ground and a venerated senior advanced on a spotted mare draped in a woven shawl, his bearing evoked silence, even amid the grand escort. An interpreter drew near to relay his speech, noting that thanks, in their tradition, surpassed bare words. It called for a token of esteem. The maidens Elias had succored hailed from a lineage of note, and the senior declared their homecoming had kindled profound thanks across sundry villages. He proffered a whittled cedar emblem incised with clan sigils that betokened sanctuary, informing Elias that strangers seldom claimed such esteem. Elias took it with reverence, tucking it within his coat as the senior continued, recounting how the maidens portrayed his soft ministrations, the manner he'd demanded naught, and how he'd honored their heritage. A soul's verity shines in instants unobserved. As the senior withdrew, the leader re-emerged, expounding that the escort's advent bore twin aims, homage and bulwark. Outriders had spied a crew of brigands veering into the canyon, ruffians bold enough to assail solitary dwellers. In Navajo sight, neglecting Elias's defense, post his aid to their youth, would stain their name. A squad of fighters alighted, depositing hide-bound parcels at Elias's boots. Within lay provisions, jerked venison, corn, implements, pelts, and a masterfully hewn lance inscribed with emblematic motifs. These weren't trifling presents, but pledges he'd weather trials with allies. Ere Elias could absorb it all, a far-off cry rang from the bluff as an outrider hailed peril. The leader's face set stern, and in a flash, the escort wheeled to combat stance. Mounts aligned in ordered files, lances tipped ahead, riders arraying with deft speed. Elias descended his stoop, offering to join their line, though the leader at first bid him hold to the rear. He noted Elias's determination and permitted him a spot to aid, sans undue risk. Instants on, the brigands erupted from the woods, anticipating an easy mark. Instead, they clashed with a phalanx beyond reckoning. The Navajo flowed as one, encircling the foes, sealing their flight, and assailing with honed tactics. Elias braced his long arm, discharging solely when called, heeding the leader's charge and proceeding warily. In mere heartbeats, the brigands broke and fled, routed and broken. The Navajo voiced no whoops or revels. They resumed poised order, as if they'd merely fulfilled an owed task. The leader wheeled to Elias and assured him the brigands wouldn't dare return. Then he bent close and uttered words Elias would carry always. Your mercy summoned this bulwark to your threshold. The escort commenced its retreat, their forms gliding in ordered swells over the canyon. Ere departing, the leader recalled that sentinels would linger on far bluffs, not to encroach, but to bar any lurking foe. Elias beheld as droves of riders vanished, their allegiance knit not by debt, but by shared regard. When he pressed his palm to the whittled emblem in his coat, he felt the heft of the pact he'd won. He'd followed his gut, extending aid to two trembling outsiders. But that unthinking choice had tempered a link profounder than dreams. From then on, the canyon felt no longer void. Elias perceived the shadow wardens who kept wordless vigil o'er him, saluting the soul who'd met their daughters with tenderness. And though he resumed his tranquil days, he bore a fresh assurance in his core that even one gesture of grace might resound afar, enough to rally a whole realm of guardians round a man and alter him eternally.